This is Tamiya Robles. I am the credit restoration expert and CEO of Fix My Credit Now 850.com. And this training class is more for people who are trying to fix their own credit. So I'm basically going to walk you through what credit is and ultimately how to fix your own credit. So these are the three credit bureaus, the main three, the big three, the three Bs. They have different little nicknames, but for the most part, it's Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And these are the ones that we're going to focus on today. Again, it's TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. There are the major three credit bureaus. These are the most popular and widely used by creditors and lenders. They are strictly a data furnisher company, and their purpose is to gather data about you and your report and report how you use your credit. So, what I mean by a data furnisher is they're just three separate companies that gather information and report it on your credit report, or they list the information or the data on your credit report. That's it. Their job is not to do any sort of investigation, verification of any kind. They get the information, put it on your credit report as is. That's all. Where do the credit bureaus get their information? So even though it's not a requirement, it's actually the creditors that are reporting the information to the credit bureaus and therefore to reflect on your credit report. For the most part, a large part of the consumer's credit report is coming from the information, the data is coming from creditors. Also, you have public records. Public records, which includes bankruptcies, repossessions, child support, foreclosures. That too is information that is reporting on the credit report to the credit bureaus. Lastly, the consumer can provide information to the 3Bs, to Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. That information is usually when they're updating personal information such as their name, their address. In a lot of cases, some renters have signed up for rent reporting, and when you sign up for rent reporting, you're providing that third party company information about your payment history, your rental payment history to them report to the credit bureaus. Um, some Experian has a program where you can boost your credit. Again, that's providing them with information, a third party with information to then give to the credit bureaus so they can solely, strictly report the information. Their job is not to do any research, not to investigate, solely report. Now we're going to talk about credit scores. A consumer's credit score is calculated by their payment history, the amounts owed, their credit length, the type of credit, and new credit. So these items are broken down in percentages. So payment history is a huge part. That's the biggest percentage that goes towards your credit score. That's 35% of your credit score. Amount of debt you owe, if any, that is a 30% calculation towards your credit score. Credit length is 15%. Type of credit that you have or a mixture of credit, that would be 10%. And any new credit, any open accounts, anything you've recently opened, that is 10% of your credit score. The credit report. So we're now going to start talking about the actual credit report that is shown on all three bureaus. We're going to go through each part of a credit report in detail, and I'm going to explain to you what everything means moving forward. What is on a credit report? A standard credit report usually has personal identifying information, which is your name, your address, your employer, your date of birth. Some credit reports have partial socials. It will also have your credit account, so any sort of debt that you owe will reflect on your credit report, even if you don't owe it anymore, just your whole history. If a creditor has reported it to the 3Bs, you'll find this on your credit report. Any inquiries that you may have had in the past 2 years, it shouldn't be beyond 2 years, but in some cases it is, but within the past 2 years, your credit inquiries, any sort of public record, this will also show up on your credit report. Here is an example of a credit report. For privacy purposes, I have blocked out the individual's identifying information such as their name and their address. But what you will see here is the top portion of a credit report where it shows what type of credit score it is. In this case, this is a Vantage score. The credit scores are showing here. This is showing the credit score for TransUnion and Experian. Then you will have the date of the credit report showing. For TransUnion, it's dated March 19th, 2022, and the same for Experian. This credit report date is when the date is the date that the credit report was actually pulled. The name should be on the credit report of the consumer, date of birth or year they were born. Sometimes it doesn't show at all. That's why it's blank for Experian, and their current address, which you may also see are past addresses or previous addresses and previous employers. Now, this is an actual account. This is a positive account or an account that is reporting positively on this particular consumer's credit report. So the account name is PHA Mortgage Services, and it has their account number, high balance, last verified. This is the last time their account was verified by the creditor, which is PHH. The date of last activity, any sort of activity that was done on this account, it's going to show the date of that, the date the account was reported to the credit bureau. It looks like it has September 2nd, 2021, September 2nd, 2021 in Experian. The date it was opened is reported. This is when this account was opened. The any balance owed, close date, account rating, account description. It's describing what type of trade line or debt this was. The dispute status, as you can see, it says account not disputed. This is pretty much self-explanatory, but we're going to go into further detail as well in a few minutes. Then you'll have the dispute status, the creditor type, account status, payment status, creditor remarks, any remarks that the PHH mortgage service might have had, payment amount, last payment made, and term length, the length of the loan, past due amount, the account type, payment frequency, credit limit is also being reported. Well, it's not being reported here, but that is an option that creditors have that they can report. And then you show their history, their payment history. A lot of times that is missing on here, but how this particular credit monitoring service um, how they report things, they show it in this format. Every company and credit monitoring company reports things a little differently. This credit monitoring service is called Smart Credit, and usually this is the format they use when reporting any payment history. Towards the end of your credit report, you will find a list of your inquiries if there are any inquiries reported. Here it will show you the creditor's name that pulled your credit report, the type of inquiry, the date of the inquiry, and which bureau it hit. So if you look here, it's on the top right, on the top left hand, it's Navy Federal Credit Union. And the date they pulled this credit report was February, it looks like 16th, 2021. And that showed up on the TransUnion credit report. Another portion of the credit report is going to show public information. On this particular credit report, there were no public records to show on the credit report, but here you'll see if there's any bankruptcies, any foreclosures, any evictions, and possibly child support payments. Where to get a credit report. So consumers can either request a free credit report or they can purchase their credit report with scores from a credit monitoring company. Federal law, consumers are allowed free access to their credit reports once a year from TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Uh, annualcreditreport.com is actually a government mandated website that does allow customers to pull their credit report for free once a year. You can also go directly to the source to TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax and also get your free credit report. Requests can be made online or over the phone, but this can only happen once a year. After that, if you want additional credit reports, you will have to pay if you go through these companies. So some reputable credit monitoring companies and well-known, they're well-liked as well, especially within the credit repair industry, are Smart Credit, Identity IQ, MyFICO, Experian, and Privacy Guard. There are many, many others. I actually know some people who have created their own credit monitoring company. So there's a ton of them out there. These are the ones that I'm mostly familiar with. Analyzing a credit report. So with this lesson, we're going to look at similar slides, which are intentional. I need you guys to get a little more comfortable with looking at a credit report. Some of the information will be repetitive just to help you understand and get used to looking at a credit report, analyzing it a little better. Here we're showing the personal identifying information, the PI, personal identifier. This is the consumer or the customer's personal information. It is again showing the date the credit report was pulled. Also, it's showing the name. You may see different spellings and different versions of the consumer's name reporting amongst all three credit bureaus. In the next class, we're going to go even further into detail about what should and shouldn't be on here, how things should be reporting properly. But for now, this is just taking a little closer look of what your personal identifying information may particularly look like. Sometimes you'll see different names. If you were married before, your maiden name might show on your credit report. If you're a junior, senior, one, two, three, second, third, fourth, fifth, sometimes that's on here. Your date of birth. This particular credit monitoring software or program, which is Smart Credit, they just put the year as the date of birth. That doesn't make or break your credit score. You just want to make sure that the information is accurate. So if you were born in 1979, not 1978, not 1970, you just want to make sure that's accurate. Current address. It's the address that you live at today. Um, you would see that. That should be the only address. Make sure it's current and that there's not a mixture of addresses. But if you see under Experian, not only did they put the current address or the consumer's current address, they're telling you what date that they got this information. So they updated that information February 2022. And if you look at the credit report, this is as current as it's going to get. And this credit report was pulled March 2022. So this is pretty current as far as Experian is concerned. Previous addresses, sometimes you'll see nothing there. Sometimes you'll see a bunch of old addresses or previous addresses on the credit report. That it does have an effect on your credit score. We'll get into that in the next lesson. The employer, you can put your current employer. Sometimes they'll be all of the employers you've ever worked in your life or since you started moving around as an adult using your social security number, it follows you. That will also be there. This is an account. This is actually a positive account. It's PHH Mortgage Services, and it's pretty much self-explanatory what is showing up on this account. but we're going to go over it right now. So you have the account number. This is the account number of this particular account from this company. The high balance is showing on both TransUnion and Experian. The date this information was last verified by this customer, by this company, and there should be the dates there, the date of last activity, any sort of activity. In reference, in particular, it's payment activity. That's going to be reported there. The date it was reported to the credit bureaus, that you should see dates there. The date the account was open, that's very important. We're going to get into that in the next lesson on how important that is, but you should see dates there. If there's a balance owed on the debt, it should reflect right in the section under balance owed. If this account closed for whatever reason, whether it's paid off or the account was terminated, the close date will reflect uh, under that line. Account rating is not really an important it's not really important as far as your credit score is concerned, but it does give you an idea of what happened. It's telling you what happened with this account. This account was actually transferred to another mortgage company, so they have transferred there. It doesn't affect your credit score per se, but again, we'll go into that a little further in the next lesson. Account description, it's describing what type of an account this is. Dispute status, this is if the client decided for whatever reason to dispute this particular account on their credit report. It's going to mention that here. Creditor type, what type of credit is this? In this case, this says personal finance, and Experian has mortgage companies. So it's explaining what type of debt or loan or trade line this actually is. Account status, if it's open or closed, that will report. Payment status, are you current or not? That's going to reflect right there. Creditor remarks. Remarks, in my personal opinion, do not affect your credit score. However, it is communicating to people who are looking at your credit report what exactly is going on with your account. So in this case, it blatantly says, obviously stating that this is a transferred account from one lender to another. The payment amount is on there. Last payment made is reported. Term length is reported, how long this debt was for. Past due amount, if there's any debt owed. Account type is reported. Payment frequency, this is a month-to-month payment. And then the credit limit. And if you look a little further below, and again, I just want to stress, this is a smart credit third-party monitoring company. So if you use other credit monitoring companies such as Identity IQ, the setup is a little different, but the same meaning. So if you look under the 2-year payment history, it will show you how often this person paid, if they paid on time or not. And if you can see, they're all in the green. So at that particular time before the transfer, they made on-time payments. Public information. So on this particular credit report, there's none. There's no public information reporting on their credit report. But here, if there are any judgments of any sorts, bankruptcies, child support, anything court related will definitely be listed on the credit report under this subject, public information. Now we're looking at the inquiries on this credit report. So inquiries are reported a little differently because it's just simply telling you who pulled your credit report, what day they pulled your credit report, and what bureau they pulled it from. So if you go down the line, we're not going to go through each and every one of them because you can simply read it and see. But for example, Navy Federal, which is the first creditor, pulled a credit report on, it looks like February 16th, 2021, and they pull from TransUnion. These are hard pulls. When you look at Smart Credit's credit report and you see a list of inquiries right here, you'll see that these were all hard pulls. Soft pulls don't negatively impact your credit report. You don't even know it's happening. But these were the hard pulls. These are the accounts and the inquiries that negatively impacted the customer's credit report, typically by 2 to 3 points. So if you have some inquiries that need to be removed, just kind of think in your head that once you remove them, it's going to be a 2 to 3 point increase in your credit report. Once again, we're going to take an even closer look at a credit report. With this lesson, we're going to go deeper into every specific item on a credit report and what should and should not be on the credit report. So we're definitely going to talk about what should and should not be on a credit report. At this point, we've looked at credit reports, a couple items. We can identify what's what at this point. Now we're going to talk about what should and should not be on a credit report and how that affects your score, both negative and positives. At the top of every credit report or the head of the credit report, you should see the type of credit score that your report is showing. Smart Credit does show Vantage scores, not FICO scores. So these are the examples that we're using in this training class. We're using a Smart Credit report that is showing a Vantage score. The head of the report should also show the date of the credit report or the date that the report has been pulled, personal information, PI, which credit bureaus are on the credit report, and 99.9 times out of 10 it will always be the 3Bs, and your credit score. Again, this will show up on a credit monitoring software that you're paying for. It'll show your credit report and your credit score. Here we're talking about the FICO score. So when you look at your credit report and you're pulling it from a credit monitoring software or program such as Smart Credit or Identity IQ, you're going to see a Vantage score. However, it's the FICO score that everyone knows. So FICO is the original credit scoring system. It's used by most lenders and is viewed as the consumer's quote unquote actual credit score. So since FICO has been out first and it's the oldest, most consumers know FICO. They've never heard of Vantage. A lot of lenders use FICO. Some lenders have never even heard of Vantage. But when you're trying to figure out what your actual credit score is, you want to use a company that uses FICO. You can even go to FICO directly and get your FICO score. You can go through other avenues, and we'll get into that in a bit. But this is well used, well recognized. Um, as far as lenders are concerned, they're going to pull your FICO score. And as far as the consumer is concerned, more than likely they're going to want to know what their FICO score is and no other score. Now we're talking about Vantage. Vantage is FICO's one and only competitor. It isn't well known amongst lenders and consumers. However, it is starting to gain some traction and is used in with certain lenders or by certain lenders. Many rental companies do use them. So if you're looking to rent an apartment and they say that they're going to pull your credit, more than likely they're pulling your Vantage score, not your FICO score. Vantage uses a different scoring system than FICO. Um, and to be honest, Vantage actually buys your FICO score and from FICO, and then they do their own numbers, their own calculations. A lot of times, the Vantage score is usually several points lower than your FICO score. It's used by many credit monitoring companies, like I've mentioned before: Credit Karma, Credit Sesame, Identity IQ, Smart Credit. And so whenever you're pulling your credit report through these third-party monitoring companies, if you see Vantage Score um, on the report, just have an idea that this is a general area of where that consumer stands with their credit score. It is not exact. And so, but it gives you an idea. So if you just want to know if in general your credit score is low or high, average, where you stand, you can you can look at your Vantage score and just basically have an idea, but don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Definitely check both your FICO and your Vantage score. If the consumer is trying to get a credit card or trying to go to any lender that's going to pull their credit report, the best thing to do is to ask them which uh, which credit monitoring system are you going to use? Are you going to use FICO or are you going to use Vantage? So you have an idea. Okay, so back to the top of a credit report. So we're going to dig a little deeper, like I stated, and we're going to talk about what should and should not be on a credit report. So when you pull a smart credit report, first thing you see is this section, the date the report was pulled. So in this case, this is an older credit report. It was pulled July 21st, 2021. Then this is the Vantage score. And if you look across the page, you will see the Vantage score for TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Then you see the customer's personal information. You see the date that the credit was pulled, which was July 21st, 2021, which we already know because we saw that at the top of the page. Now here, again, I've blocked out this person's information, but what you don't see is that their name for TransUnion was reported different ways. It was reported more than once. Experian and Equifax had the name as well. So again, when you look at your credit report, you need to make sure that it only has the correct spelling of your name one time, not multiple times, not your past name, not your former name, not your maiden name, your current name. And if you use the middle initial, fine, the middle initial should be there. If you don't, it shouldn't be on there. That's major when it comes to your credit score and what is on your credit report. So if you have, let's say, Verizon 10 years ago and they thought you were Susan A. Smith and you're really Stephen A. Smith, um, they're going to report the name that you used when you signed up with them. So that's going to show up right here. So if you have 10 accounts and for whatever reason you spelled your name differently with all of those creditors are going to report the name that you signed up with here. So what's going to happen is you're going to see 10 different versions of your name right here. That should not happen. It does happen, but that should not happen. So the first thing you want to do always when you're disputing anything on your credit report, the first thing you want to do is remove any additional names, old names, and make sure you only have one name reporting on your credit report. Again, the name associates you with your old debt. So if it's not on there, then it can't be verified. Your debt can't be verified if the old names are not showing on your credit report. Same thing with the date of birth. So in this case, they have the person, the client is born 1978, and it should be 100% accurate across all three bureaus under the FCRA, which is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. All information reporting on your credit report should be 100% accurate across the board. In this case, it is. Again, I've continued to black out the information for privacy purposes, but current address. You need to only have the address that you are living at right now, or you can choose the address that you want the bureaus to know. So, for example, let's say you're a traveling nurse and your job is to travel throughout the US, and maybe you do have a permanent spot, but you're mostly at, let's say, your sister's house in another state, and you want all of your mail to go to your sister's house. As long as you can show a bill or something with that address on there, you can use that as your current address. Again, let's remember that the credit bureaus are strictly a data furnisher company. They only report the information that is given to them. They do not do an investigation on it. That is not their job. Their job is to take information and report it on your credit report and to show that. So if you have a PO box, for example, PO boxes technically should not be on there. Um, so I remove them, but so I have seen people use a PO box as their current address, but you can't live there. But if you have a PO box, some people give that information to the credit bureaus. Um, but if you want a different address, if you want to use your mom's house, if you have multiple homes, and you can use whatever address you want. But the key thing is to remove all the old addresses, which leads us to the previous addresses. You don't need to have any old address reporting on your credit report. That is not mandatory. Again, this is strictly something that the bureaus have chosen to do. They are only getting their information from old creditors. So when you signed up for credit, a line of credit, an account, credit cards, what have you, a bill, that address that you signed up with is the address that they have. So if you have an address from 10 years ago and you've since moved to three different times, they're going to show only what they have. So you want to remove those old addresses, disassociate yourself with the old debt. So when it comes to disputing these negative accounts, it becomes so much easier for you. Okay, and if you can see here, you see the dates of when they were last updated. So you can determine whether or not they're current. But the PO boxes, you also see the PO box, they're on there. I remove them. I remove them because, again, that's some creditor that this customer signed up with, and he or she gave the address of a PO box. So if I remove that, then it disassociates them with the debt, and then I'll follow up with a dispute letter to get that old item removed or that negative item removed. Employer, this person works at Pepsi, Burks, PepsiCo, and even how they're reporting Pepsi is there's different versions of how they're reporting the two employers. That's not good. It should be one employer across all three credit bureaus, and the name should be accurate. Everything should be 100% accurate. There shouldn't be different versions of Pepsi or Burks at all. You really don't even have to have the employer reporting. So if you want to remove that, you most certainly can. Now we're looking at the body of a credit report. So when you look at a credit report, you're going to see a bunch of accounts. The more accounts you have, the longer your credit report is. If you don't have that many accounts, I think I've worked with a client who literally just had one thing on their credit report, so it was just one account, and that's it. So obviously the credit report will be much shorter. So in this case, we're going to look at, again, this is a credit report. This is an account that is current. So this is a positive account. And we're going to go over what should and should not be on this account. Now, even though this is a positive account, we're just strictly using this as for training purposes, this particular account. You don't need to remove an account just because you might find some inaccuracies and possible violations. If the account is positive and it's giving you history and it's showing positivity and helping your credit score, it doesn't matter how wrong they're reporting because that account is benefiting you. So here you can see the account numbers, and they are, it's not a complete account number, that is fine. What you want to do is just make sure that all of the account numbers are reporting 100% accurately across the three Bs, and they are in this situation. The high balance is reporting correctly. The high balance is on there, that's fine. The date the account was last verified, only TransUnion gave a date, that is fine. Date of last activity. So they have three different dates. That doesn't make or break your account. So they have three different dates here, which is deemed an inaccuracy on your credit report. So if this was a negative credit account, account reflecting on a credit report, then I would definitely list that as one of the items that need to be challenged. But again, this is a positive credit report, so we're just going to leave everything alone here. The date the account was opened, TransUnion has 5/18/17, Experian and Equifax have 5/1/2017. That is inaccurate information. That's actually a violation as opposed to an inaccuracy. When you're disputing items on your credit report, you want to show as many harder hitting items, harder negatives than just soft ones like inaccuracies. Um, the credit bureaus don't really move if you're pointing out inaccuracies. Um, it does help though. It definitely helps. I use them. I always point out anything that's wrong, no matter how big or small the issue is, because I feel that the credit bureaus need to see everything that's wrong. But they what takes precedence over an inaccuracy are violations. And the easiest way, especially when looking at a smart credit account, of identifying which accounts are very important or potentially could be a violation is looking at the highlighted items on the credit report, such as high balance, that's pretty major. The date of last activity, um, that is an inaccuracy, is not major. However, date open, so the date your account is open is major. So if there's two different dates, three different dates, or if you know for a fact what the exact day was the account was open, and even if it's just one date reporting, but you know that's not the correct date and you can prove it, then that is a major violation. Why that is a violation is because it's giving a time frame on when your account was open, when your loan was open, when it started. That starts the clock when it comes to your history. So when other lenders look at your credit report, one of the main factors that they're going to consider is how long have you been responsible or irresponsible for a debt. So if the date is not correct, then you're giving false information to other lenders, which could potentially affect whether or not you're going to be accepted for their loan. So that's pretty important. So date opens is major, and if it's inaccurate, you want to fight that, and include in your dispute that this is a violation, not just an inaccuracy, but a violation. Close date, even though we're going to balance owed. Balance owed is is important if you owe a debt, because again, it's what the lenders are going to see, and they're going to say, okay, this is a closed account. However, if there's a balance left, that means you owe a debt. So that they're going to view it as if you were given a loan and you were approved for a loan, but for whatever reason this account is closed and you still owe money, we're not going to trust you with our money because you're going to wind up owing us. So loan denied, approval rejected, things like that. That's pretty important. The close date is major, 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 because how are the creditors going to know how the account ended, if there, or when it ended? How long truly has this loan or line of credit been open or available? So a close date should be on there. However, if it's not, like Experian and Equifax, that's fine. But if you're, I'm sorry, it's not fine. If it's missing a close date, that's major. Now, TransUnion has a date. That part is fine if it's correct, but Experian and Equifax do not. Now, if you dispute and they decide, the bureaus decide that they're showing the close date because the creditor has submitted the correct close date, and you notice that there's still inaccurate dates, there's different dates, then that is again another problem, a major violation, and ultimately that account needs to be removed from your credit report. So the account rating, again, it shows what happened with this account. So this account was transferred, it looks like, to someone else, another company. Account description, that's pretty important. It's describing what type of debt or loan this is. This is an individual account, an individual loan. One person is responsible for this account. The dispute status, account not disputed, is equal across the board. This consumer did not dispute this account. It's a positive account, so no one should be disputing it. Creditor type, so TransUnion says bank, Experian says all bank, and Equifax says mortgage company. So again, if this was a negative account, if this was negative, then for sure um, this account would need to be disputed because that's not 100% accurate information across the board. Account status, this is letting you know if this is an open or closed account, and all three bureaus are stating that this is a closed account. The payment status, that means that this person was current. They're definitely current on their, or were current with their payments by the time the account closed. And creditor remarks, they're explaining what happened. The creditor is explaining what happens to the account, that this account was transferred over to another lender. Payment amount, this is $0. There is no payment amount because this account was transferred to someone else, another creditor. The last payment was made was TransUnion and Equifax are saying August 21st, and unfortunately, Equifax is saying August 1st. But again, that's important to creditors, and it's pretty big because they need to know the accurate information. Did you really pay on such and such day? Because this is a positive account, no creditor is going to look down on this, even if that particular date is off. The term length, this obviously is a mortgage, so with 360 months reporting, you pretty much know that's a mortgage. That's reporting, that needs to be on there. Past due amount, there was none, positive report, and the account type. Again, this is a mortgage. So TransUnion and Experian are saying FHA real estate mortgage, and Equifax is saying real estate mortgage. So if this was an account you were decided to dispute because it was negative, even though that is not reporting exactly perfect, it's in the same realm. So real estate mortgage and FHA real estate mortgage, it's not worth the fight or bringing up. I wouldn't bring that up. Payment frequency is monthly, and that's pretty important. So Experian and Equifax are supposed to report that as well. Credit limit, there is none, again, only because this is a closed transferred account, and it's kind of blocked off, but this was a perfect payment history, and it was current before the transfer. So here is another account that's positive. This is a Navy Federal Credit Union account, and we're going to go over this as well. You're going to see some inaccuracies, possible violations, but once again, because this is a positive on the consumer's credit report, there's no need to dispute it. But again, I'm just going to go over some things over and over again just to make sure you guys are clearly understanding what should and shouldn't be on a credit report, whether it's positive or negative. So the account numbers are fine. They're as identical as they can be since it's a large portion of the account is blocked off. High balance, TransUnion is showing a high balance, Equifax is not. So this is an inaccuracy, but it's not hurting the consumer. The date the account was last verified with TransUnion, they put a date in, Equifax did not. Date of last activity, two separate dates. Date the account was reported, um, that they reported to the bureaus was February 22nd of 2022, and Equifax did theirs on the 1st of February in 2022. Date the report was open or the account was open was February 5th, 2015. Equifax has the 1st. There is a balance owed of $24. And the close date, there is no close date because this is an open active account. If you look down to account status, it says open. So that's pretty important because if this is a closed account and there is a balance owed, that means there is a debt owed to that creditor. So if lenders look at that, they're going to say, hey, again, you owed other people money, and you may owe us money, and that will determine whether or not you're going to be approved. And if they see something like that, more than likely they won't approve you for whatever loan you're trying to request. We already talked about the account rating. It's an open account. Now, in this case, this looks like this is a credit card, and this person is an authorized user. If you remember the other account we looked at, it said individual. When you say individual, that means that person is the primary person on that account. In this case, this consumer is the authorized user, so they don't have uh, control over the account. They basically piggybacked off of someone else's credit card, which is fine. This helps with their credit score, and it's become a positive, and it probably increased their credit score and gave them some history. And you just want to become an authorized user on accounts if you can, to better your credit profile. But that's what they did. So they're an authorized user on the account. So let's say the primary account holder for this trade line, they started messing up on their credit report and started missing some payments and things like that. Then you can simply just tell the bureaus, hey, I was just the authorized user. I'm not responsible for this account. And they will instantly remove you from this account if it was reported negatively on your credit report. So it's an easy fix, but that's what that means. The dispute status, this account has never been disputed or is not disputed. And creditor type, credit union for one, credit card companies is another. Those are two completely different things, to be honest with you. If this was a negative account, I would definitely dispute that. To say this is a credit union and a credit card company, it's like which is it? Account status, again, is open. Payment status is current. No latenesses. As of the day of this report, creditor remarks, only Equifax has a remark. Credit card amount in HC column is credit limit. That HC code, you don't have to worry about that, but it has something to do with how the creditors have to report their accounts. There's certain codes that they have to follow, so that's what that remark means. Payment amount is supposed to be $20. Last payment made, TransUnion has February 9th and Equifax has February 1st, two different dates. Term length, blank. It shouldn't be blank, but it's blank. Past due amount is on there, $0, which is pretty good. And the account type, it's credit card, so we know that. Payment frequency, that's not on there. It's blank, that's fine. It's not a big deal in the situation. Credit limit, it just shows you that this is a credit card for $38,900, which is good. So whoever this report belongs to, they became an authorized user on a really good credit card. So that's that. you get comfortable looking at a credit report, you'll be so comfortable that you won't need to go through each line unless you want to. You'll know what specific items you need to go to, what stands out, what jumps at you. So as opposed to going through each and every line on this account, we're just going to go quickly and look at some major important things. So make sure you always want to make sure that the account name is on here, which it is, Central Loan. Take a quick look at the account numbers they're showing. That's great. Definitely need account numbers. Look at the date the account was opened and look across and see, are they reporting accurately? They're not, but this is another positive account. So that's fine. No issue so far. Then let's skip to a close date. So this is a closed account and only one bureau has a closed date. It's not hurting the credit score because it's a positive account. If it was a negative account, that would be a major problem with Experian and Equifax. Account description, this is an individual account. And let's keep on going. This is account type, it's a mortgage. The last payment made. TransUnion and Experian are on the same page. Equifax is off. So by 20 days. So they are August 1st, and the other two are saying August 21st is when this account was open. The term length is on there, so that's definitely important, especially for a mortgage. They all have that on there, so that's pretty good. And account type, mortgage, monthly payment should be on with Experian and Equifax. It's not, but that's okay. Again, it's a positive credit report. And it looks like they have a perfect payment history before the account closed. So this is definitely a positive account that you do not want to dispute. So this is a negative account. So we're going to definitely analyze this negative account because we've been looking at positive accounts so far. So negative accounts are obviously accounts that are going to negatively impact the consumer's credit score. It's going to lower it by whatever number you'll see. And getting it removed will more than likely increase their credit score significantly. So this is a Capital One account. So they do have the account number on there, so the name of the account, which is good. So then you want to look at the account numbers, make sure they are accurate, and they are across the board. High balance. TransUnion has a high balance. Experian and Equifax do not. That is an inaccuracy. Is something that I would definitely put in a dispute letter, but it's not hard hitting enough to stand alone. So because this is a negative account that you want removed from your credit report, we're going to bring up every small negative to positive. I'm sorry, any small negative to major negatives. And we're going to bring that to the attention of the credit bureau. So definitely the fact that the high balance is reporting on one and there's an inaccuracy across the board, that's something where you would want to put in a dispute letter. The fact that this was last verified only with TransUnion and not the other two bureaus, definitely that's pretty important. You don't know when this information was verified or if at all. So if this information hasn't been verified, why is it being reported to the credit bureau? So you want to bring up that issue. Date of last activity. So if you can see, all three credit bureaus have three different dates. So if this is an account that the consumer belongs to the consumer, it's only one account. As you can see, it's one account number. So all the information should be identical. Why is there mixed up information? So the date of last activity, TransUnion has 5/6/2021. Experian has 5/1/2021. But Equifax has July 1st, 2019. That's a major, major problem. So you got to put that in your dispute letter. The date that this was reported to the credit bureau, 5/8/21, 5/8/21, but February 1st, 2022. Mixed information again. So there's a lot of problems reporting on this credit report that you want to indicate on your dispute letter. The date the account was opened. So TransUnion has February 22nd, 2016, and Experian and Equifax have February 1st, 2016. That's a major problem and that's a violation. You definitely want to indicate that in your dispute letter. There's no balance owed, but there is a close date. This is a closed account. It's actually a closed collection account. So there should definitely be a close date. However, only TransUnion has a close date. Experian and Equifax do not. That is a major violation, and it needs to be addressed, or they need to delete this from your credit report. So definitely put that in your dispute letter. Account rating, they have it as paid with TransUnion and Experian. However, Equifax is saying that it's a derogatory account. That's major as well. What is that saying to the other lenders or anyone looking at your credit report? So it looks like TransUnion and Experian are saying, yeah, they paid this debt, but Equifax is saying no, they didn't. They're late. Okay. Now the account description, individual, it belongs to the person, the primary person on this account, so that's fine. They're not an authorized user or a co-signer of anything. Dispute status, TransUnion, Experian Equifax says this account was not disputed. Well, we're going to definitely dispute it, or we would if we were to take control of this account. Creditor type, bank, and all banks. That's close enough, not worth a dispute or to mention in your dispute letter. This account status is closed across the board. That's how they're reporting it. And the payment status is collection charge off across the board, accurate. Creditor remarks, I skip over that. It's really irrelevant. The goal is to get this account removed. So if we remove this account, it doesn't even matter what the creditor's remarks are. But you can take a look at it. So creditor TransUnion says payment after charge off was made, dispute resolved. But they're saying dispute, but it says the account was not disputed. So you see the conflicting information. If you want to use that against them in your dispute letters, you definitely can. Experian says account was in dispute, now resolved, reported by the subscriber, meaning Capital One reported this. The unpaid balance reported as a loss by the credit grantor, which is Capital One. So they're saying something slightly different. And then Equifax says the consumer disputes, reinvestigation and process, and then they have that HC code. So anytime you do a dispute by law under the FCRA, uh, the the creditor has to acknowledge the fact that the claim is the account is under investigation, meaning you filed dispute, you're disputing it. But if you recall, they said this account is not disputed. So actually, nope. Equifax said the account is disputed. The other two said it's not. So maybe only Equifax was disputed. I don't know, but this information is again conflicting, and it needs to be included in your dispute letter. The payment amount across the board is $0. It's fine. Last payment made. There are two different numbers here, two different dates. So TransUnion and Experian are saying 5/6/2021 is when the last when the last payment was made. However, Equifax is saying July 1st, 2019. Seriously, different dates. That's a problem. So you want to indicate that in the dispute letter. Term length is blank. Last due amount, past due amount, I'm sorry, $0. Account type, credit card. Equifax does not have an account type. That's a major problem because we don't know what type of debt this is if you're not specifying. So that needs to be brought up, and that's also a violation. Payment frequencies blank. Credit limit was $3,000. So this is basically a $3,000 credit card. The highest balance it ever had was $3,517 according to Capital One. And this is in collections. So this definitely needs to come off. There are so many problems with this account that you have so many points to make up, and this would be a good account for sure to dispute and would more than likely come off if you stick to your guns and list all the negatives that you see. Even when you go down to the lateness, as the 2-year payment history. TransUnion is not reporting anything, which is fine. That's on them. But look at Experian. Experian is reporting a 30-day lateness in July, August of 2019, 60-day lateness in August, and then September it's 90 days, October it's 120, but then November it's 120, and December it's 150. So math doesn't work that way. It goes 3, 6, 9, and so on and so forth. So how do you go from 90 days late to 120, which is fine, but then you're 120 days late again in November? Nope, that's a violation. That's an inaccuracy. Let me say that. It's definitely an inaccuracy, and it doesn't go like that. So you want to bring up the lateness as well. You just literally want to talk to the bureaus like you would talk to anybody in a professional way. And when you're bringing up issues, um, and just ask them, how is this possible? This is impossible. You need to remove this account. And they should do that unless they can prove that they're right. Now we're at the end of the credit report. At the end of the credit report, you should see, again, if you're using a smart credit platform, is public information. Again, this is where you would see the bankruptcies, child support, not necessarily repos, but any judgments against the client, you'll see it right here. A list of their inquiries. Again, these are hard pulls. These are the inquiries that are negatively impacting your credit score, that's lowering your credit score. These should fall off every 2 years. Now, a lot of people, the old school version that we're used to hearing is debt falls off after 7 years, and so do inquiries after two. Not necessarily. There's so many consumers that have obviously a credit report that they don't have people assigned to everyone's case where they're double checking and making sure that the rules have been followed and that the 7 years has passed or the 2 years has passed. So you always want to take a look at that too. So with inquiries, if you look on your credit report and look at the date of inquiries, if you see anything beyond 2 years, instantly put that on your dispute letter and simply say that it's been over 2 years. This should not be on here, and they remove it. Inquiries, in my opinion, are one of the easiest accounts to remove, um, but you just have to bring it to the attention of the credit bureaus. So here you have on the left the creditor's name and the date of inquiry. So if you look down a bit, you see a capital one inquiry and then cap one and A, and then it says capital one as if it's one word. If you look over to the middle column, the date of inquiry was they ran their credit report 3 times in one day. That's a problem, and I'm pretty sure that this individual did not approve of that. So if there's an inquiry that you didn't give authorization for, then you can say that in your dispute letter and that should come off. Unless that creditor can prove that you did. But again, more than likely they were trying to get a car and they got their credit ran through and they kept going using it over and over again until they could find a loan for them. But more than likely that client did not approve for that their credit to be ran multiple times, and all these inquiries actually can be removed. This lesson, we're just going to go over again what you need to look out for on a credit report. Once again, when you're looking at a credit report, you want to look for inaccurate information. I pointed this out several times on both positive and negative accounts, and we're going to go over that again. Accounts with missing vital information, re-aged accounts. Re-aged accounts are basically accounts that should have quote unquote fallen off in 7 years and they did not. Just so you are aware, people seem to confuse when that 7 year date began. So it's not the date that you open the account and 7 years afterwards. It's the date of the last, when that last payment was made. So it's 7 years after the last payment was made. I had a client recently contact me and say that, hey, this account is 15 years old and this should have this account is closed and it should have fallen off. It's well past 7 years. What he didn't realize was, yes, the account was 15 years old, but it closed only 2 years ago. So he has a couple years to go before it's supposed to allegedly fall off. So those re-aged accounts are when creditors are, it's been 7 years and they decide to start reporting to the credit bureau again as if you have a new debt. So you definitely want to pay attention to the items. And if you see that this is an old account and they just reported it again, and that item, that line item that we saw, when it's reported new, then that's them re-aging it, and that's a huge no-no and a major violation. And once you bring that to the attention of the credit bureaus, they do delete it. They don't even fight you on that. So look out for that. Debt reporting over 7 years, same thing. If you see that on your credit report, it's not necessarily re-aging, it just never fell off. Bring that to the attention of the credit bureaus, and they instantly remove it. Again, there's no, unless they're ignoring your letters, they instantly remove it. That's not a problem. It's just, that's a simple fix. Past addresses. We've discussed that. So, believe it or not, I know some credit repair specialists have their own view on this, but I've seen this so many times. I've seen this with my own account. When you update your PI, if you remove old addresses, not only does it disassociate you with your old debt, it actually increases your credit score. On my personal credit report several years ago, I literally had 20 old addresses reporting on my credit report, and some of them weren't even accurate. Some of them weren't mine. I used to mail gifts to my parents' house, and their address was reported as my current address, and I haven't lived with my parents in some time. So I got all 20 of those addresses removed and only have my current address showing on my credit report, and my credit score did increase. So definitely remove those past addresses. They're not necessary on a credit report. Having multiple employers, not necessary. You don't really even need to have an employer on your credit report. So you can get that removed, or if you're fine with the employer being on there, that's fine, but it should only be one, and the correct name should be on there, the correct spelling should be on that credit report. Duplicate negative accounts, definitely need to be on the lookout for that. So sometimes the credit bureaus, they report it funny. So you can have like one account and it might look like it's showing up 3 times. If you're seeing one item, one line, it shows, let's say it will say Verizon. I use Verizon a lot because they're such a difficult um, and well-known company, but they're a difficult company to work with when disputing files. But let's say TransUnion has an account for you, and that's one line. Then you scroll down, you see it looks like another Verizon account, but it's Experian. Then you go again, it's another account, and you see Equifax. It's still the one account. They can report it that way. I don't know why they do. It just looks weird. It looks like you have 3 accounts when it's really just one. That's nothing to dispute as long as all the information is accurate. But a lot of times, there are cases when a creditor underhandedly is reporting the same debt multiple times. That is a major problem. You can't have duplicate accounts on your credit report. So for sure, get that disputed, and the bureaus do remove that. That's another item that they don't have a problem removing. Accurate information. Once again, we've gone over this multiple times and we're going to continue to go over this. This is extremely important when you're disputing a credit report. So we can just eyeball it at this point. You guys should be very comfortable with noticing instantly where the inaccuracies are. Like I stated, I'm using the same clips so you can be very familiar, but look for any inaccurate information that it should be equal across the board and pick those out. You want to bring that to the attention in your dispute letters. You want to show proof. Everything that is wrong, big or small, definitely bring it to their attention. Missing information. Missing information is huge. Again, same snippets that we went over before. I'm seeing missing close dates with Experian and Equifax. That's major. I'm seeing the Equifax is missing the account type. This is supposed to be a credit card. I see TransUnion and Experian reporting credit card, but I don't see Equifax reporting a credit card. We need to know what type of card this is. So those two things are huge, huge, huge. So if that's missing on a credit report or your account, the negative account that you're trying to delete, definitely bring that up. Again, another visual. Old addresses. Old addresses shouldn't be on here. You can remove them. Current address. Make sure it is up to date and it's 100% accurate across the board. The customer's name, your name, should be showing correctly one time across the board. This is major. Employers are not necessary. However, if you do want them on there, just make sure it's one employer, not old employers, one employer, and that it's spelled correctly. What to do now? Okay, so now you know how to get your credit report. Now you know what to look for. Now you know how you should be disputing. So what do you do now? You need to start the dispute process. Now there's multiple ways to do it, and in this course we're going to stress dispute letters, but you don't have to just do dispute letters. You can actually call the credit bureaus directly and dispute over the phone. You can do online disputes where you go to a credit monitoring company. You can go directly to the credit bureau and dispute online. So those are the ways: writing, calling, or disputing online. Okay, disputing over the phone. So disputing over the phone, just so everyone is aware, it does not speed up the process. Disputing over the phone, online, or writing, the bureaus still have 30 to 45 days to respond to your dispute. Just understand, when you are disputing over the phone, you have to verify who you are. They cannot just take your word for it that you're you, due to obvious reasons. This is a security issue, and they are trying to avoid any sort of fraud. So they're going to ask you for your name, your social security number, your address, your old address. If you can verify, where you lived at when you were, I don't know, 18 years old. What street did you live on? Just so you know, they are looking at your credit report. They don't know you personally. You haven't set up a secured questionnaire or something to fill out. You can get a PIN number if you want that. You can set up a PIN number or a security PIN when you contact the bureaus. Usually you have that PIN number when you have frozen your accounts. But if your account isn't frozen, you have to go through this verification process. Just keep in mind that if you have updated your PI and you removed old addresses and you just have your current address, they're not going to be able to ask you those questions. So if you notice one time when you called, they asked you that question, like in the future after you removed your old addresses and they don't ask you, that's why you got it wiped off your credit report, which is a good thing. Um, each bureau, you want to call each bureau and provide them with the account information that you want to challenge. So just like how you were able to look at your credit report, I taught you how to look at your credit report, what to look for, the inaccuracies, the violations. You want to bring that to their attention as well. I'm not a fan of reporting disputing any negative items over the phone because I do not trust the credit bureaus. You cannot give them a visual, you cannot create a paper trail. You always want a paper trail. When you send out these letters, you want to save a copy. You want to make a copy for yourself. You can't do that when you're doing it over the phone. You may not even be able to record the call. They're recording it on their end, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're giving you permission to record the call. But if you can record the call, fine, but you still need to give them a comparison. So let's say you're calling TransUnion and they have one account number, but Experian and Equifax have two other account numbers. How can you prove that over the phone? They are not going to just simply take your word for it. However, if you just do decide to dispute over the phone, you definitely can. But the chances of your item being deleted based off of your word are slim to none. One of the things you can dispute over the phone are things that are obvious to that account from that credit bureau. For example, if it's a closed account or a collection charge off and there's missing a close date and you know that's a violation, then you can definitely bring that to their attention. But other than that, I am a firm believer in disputing in writing strictly for the paper trail, but you do have the option to dispute over the phone. and you may find some sort of luck over the phone. Doing a dispute online. So what you can do with that is you can go directly to the 3B's website, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, and you can dispute that way. You can sign up for a credit monitoring company, dispute that way. A lot of them have options within their software that you can dispute your negative items through their portal. Um, you can get uh, you can get free credit monitoring companies to help in dispute online, such as, let me think, Sesame Credit Sesame is one. I'm not a fan of them, but Credit Sesame and also Credit Karma. And you can dispute online with them. Keep in mind, by disputing your negative accounts online, you are giving up the right to sue the credit bureaus. So remember again, we were talking about the inaccuracies and violations, the difference between the two, how one is stronger than the other. Violations are major. So if you are recognizing that you have negative items reporting on your credit report and you have a ton of violations, each violation is worth anywhere between $1,000 and $4,000 per violation every time that's done. So that's a lot, right? That is a lot of money. In most cases, I've dealt with a lot of clients, and not one of them have ever sued the credit bureau. However, I am aware that it's a possibility. That's something you definitely want to consider, especially if you're dealing with an account that is very stubborn. You're constantly disputing, you know, this information that they're reporting is a complete, blatant violation of your rights under the FCRA. Definitely take them to court. I strongly recommend that. Believe it or not, the judges are more favorable to the consumer, especially if you're able to prove how many times you've disputed, how many different ways you've disputed your credit report, and you're able to prove that they were definitely in violation. Now, a lot of times it doesn't go to all the way to the judge. When creditors see how serious you are with disputing your account and taking it above their head and taking it to court, they know that they would have to be responsible for the court fees if they lost. Not only do they have to pay you, they also still have to delete this information off of your credit report. They don't want to lose. This could affect their reputation. You can take it to the BBB and report them and show, hey, like I won this case against them, so on and so forth. So a lot of times before you even make it to court, they will more than likely just pay you to go away and delete the account from your credit report. So that's something to consider. One of the benefits of disputing online is that you can actually check the results of your disputes online. So you can do that. That's a positive. But I'm not really in favor of disputing online either, mostly because of the fact that you give up your rights to sue the credit bureau. So when you get on line to dispute, it does give you like those little tiny words that you have to read in between, and it's legal jargon that's basically saying that um, since you decide to dispute online, that you give up your rights to sue us. But if you're okay with that, then definitely dispute online. Um, I think, in my personal opinion, even though you can do it through free monitoring, credit monitoring companies and credit monitoring companies that you have to pay for, I personally would go directly to the actual bureau and dispute online. The reason why is you're just cutting out the middleman. You're going straight to the source. You're doing your dispute directly through them, and it also allows you to show proof, like you would in a letter. You can even do a dispute letter and upload your dispute letter online with the credit bureaus. Again, just keep in mind you're giving up your rights to sue, but you are, instead of mailing your dispute letters out, you're posting your dispute letters directly with the credit bureau. So that's also a positive. Again, doing it online doesn't make it any faster. By law, they still have 30 to 45 days to respond to and complete their investigation. Here we're going to get into writing actual dispute letters. There's many different ways to dispute and write dispute letters. I'm showing everyone what works for me, what's effective, what has worked in the past. But there's many different ways. I strongly recommend once you get comfortable with it, get creative. Get creative with your letters and see what's most effective for you. But right now we're going to go through what's most effective for me. The key to writing a dispute letter. You always want to have the date on the letter. Believe it or not, if you write a dispute letter and send it off to the bureaus with no date on it, they could potentially kick back that letter and pretend that they don't know what you're talking about because there's no date. So definitely put a date on the letter. Make that the first thing you see, that they see in your letter, because that's actually one of the first things you see on your credit report is the date that credit report was pulled. So you want to have a date of when you're writing your letter. You want to have your full name and your full address. Remember, that could affect your credit score by getting the old accounts removed. So you want to make sure they have your information and it's correct. So if you're uh, Jane Doe, um, Jane Doe with no middle initial, be Jane Doe with no middle initial. If you are um, I don't know, John Smith the third, make sure you're putting the third on there if that's how you want to be addressed. But that's pretty critical because if your father and your uncle are alive and they're one and two, they have a credit report too. You don't want them to mix credit reports, which I have seen happen. So make sure you have your full proper spelling of your name and your address. You want to list the account name and the account number, even if it's a partial number, just like we saw in the other training videos, how you would see an account with a partial number, give what you can. If there is no account number, you want to mention that there is no account number because that's a major violation. So you will put the name of the account or the creditor, and in parentheses, you want to put no account number reported, and then bring up that how that's a violation. But if you have it, you list the name of the account and the account number. Next, you want to clearly explain what you're disputing and why. So again, with the Verizon. So let's say you have a Verizon account and it's missing a close date, or let's say it's missing an open date. You want to bring that up. You want to say, this account is missing, there is no close date or there's no open date. This is a major violation. Show them a picture if you can, a snippet, and explain, show it that this is a violation, please delete this account. You want to always give direction. You always want to show proof. You always want to type your name and never sign that. And we'll get into that in a minute. Never sign your dispute letter. You also want to provide 2 forms of ID. So going back to clearly explaining and giving direction. So when you're writing a dispute letter to the credit bureau, you always want to state what the problem is, you want to show what the problem is, and you want to tell them what you want to do with this problem. So the problem is this account number. And these are the issues. These are all the inaccuracies. These are all the violations, right? Don't ask them anything, in my opinion. This is what worked for me. Don't say, hey, can you please verify? Can you say, this is wrong, please delete. This is violating my rights, please delete, right? And then you want to show them proof with a snippet. And we're going to get into that in a few minutes. At the end of every letter, you want to identify yourself. You want to show who you are. Just like over the phone, they can ask you security questions. Online, they can ask you security questions. So since they can't do that in a letter, you want to clearly write your name, and then you want to give 2 forms of ID, like you would if you were in person. Like if you drove up to TransUnion Experian in the Equifax office and you're saying, hey, my name is Jane Doe, they're going to say, okay, we need to see 2 forms of ID. You want to give that to them. If you're missing that, or if you just have one form of ID, they're not going to accept your letter. They're going to reject you and potentially mark your account as fraudulent, which makes it harder to get deletions off. Okay? So make sure you have that. You never want to sign your name. You never want to sign your name on anything. You want to type your name, and an ID, a picture ID, two forms of ID is just as good as a signature. So keep that in mind. If you're missing these pertinent information here, then definitely your letters will be rejected, and you don't want that. It's a waste of time, energy, and money. Well, here's an example of everything I was stating. So here's a dispute letter. It's an old letter, but it's a dispute letter nonetheless. Again, I blocked off some personal information due to obvious reasons. So first things first, you want to have the date. You want to have your name, your full spelling and correct spelling of your name. You want to have the full correct address, date of birth. Obviously, who you're writing this to, what credit bureau you're sending this off to, and you want to put your account name, account number. You want to list the issues. In this particular letter, it's been broken down and itemized by the alphabet. So A, this is an issue. B, this is an issue. It's just going on and on. It's putting out all of the issues that is going on with that negative account. And then you see the direction. These itemized errors are both violations and inaccuracies, as well as direct violations of my rights under the FCRA. Please delete this account from my report immediately. You can word this however you want to word it, but just be sure that you're showing the account number, you're listing all the inaccuracies and the violations, and you're giving them direction. You're telling them what to do. And there's the snippet of the negative account. A little boring or bland, but that's okay. This is just simply a letter. It doesn't need to be exciting. So at the bottom, you just want to simply type your name. Here this says address. My current address is listed at the top of the letter. I've included a recent utility bill. Please remove all other addresses from my report. This is just how this particular letter was written out, but at the end of everything, at the bottom of your letter, you want to put your name, and then you want to include a utility bill, a picture ID, whether it's a passport or a driver's license or ID license, personal ID license with your picture and your address on there. You got to have two forms of ID. I would not recommend sending your social security card over there. You can. The bureaus do not need your full social security number ever. The last four is fine. But it is an acceptable form of ID. So if you want to give a photo ID and your social security card, you can. I don't recommend it. I think a bill is fine with your current address, and a photo ID is perfectly fine. We're going to talk about creating effective letters. It's one thing to write a letter, and it's another thing to write an effective letter. So writing your letters by hand, that's fine. That's doable. It's effective, right? That's totally fine. I've done it at some point. Rarely. I think I've done it just a few times, but it doesn't matter if you write it, if you're typing it out, if you're writing it in crayon and marker. It's the credit bureau's responsibility to receive your letter, review it, and to start the investigation process with the creditors. But writing your letters by hand is fine. Is it effective? It can be if it's clear. You have to understand everybody's handwriting is not legible to everybody. So if they're having a problem understanding or reading your handwriting, obviously that's going to be a problem. Typing your letters out is obviously better than writing your letters by hand. That's effective. That's more effective, in my opinion, than writing it. But using template letters, in my opinion, they're effective. Some people have a problem with template letters, but it's what you're putting in your template letters that make it effective. And like I've shown you guys before, having the snippets on a template letter is major because it's forcing the bureaus to look at exactly what the problem is, and there's no denying it, especially if they're looking at how it's being reported across the board, and it's forcing them to see the inaccuracies. Using a template letter, adding snippets is extremely effective. And in my opinion, gets you results much faster than writing a letter or typing out your letter without using a template. Since I did say that I feel that template letters are the most effective, I have multiple template letters that are going to be included in this training. However, you can actually create your own template letters and you can find free letters online, believe it or not. So it's completely up to you what you want to do, but I will give you a bunch of letters to work out on your own. You can use them for yourself, or you can just use it as a blueprint for your own personal template letters. The next step would be to mail out your dispute letters. So again, people have their own thing, their own way of doing things, but it's up to you what you feel is most effective, which is most important to you. So it's usually recommended that you want to send your letters via certified mail to all three credit bureaus. You want to keep a copy of the receipt, and you can also track the letters when you're sending it certified mail. Keep in mind this can be pretty costly depending on how often you're sending letters out, and to how many different locations you're sending these letters to. So keep that in mind. And it also depends on the weight of the letter. So if you have a very long dispute letter, obviously it's going to be heavier and it's going to cost you more money. But just keep that in mind. But most people, they send it out certified mail. Um, and then keep a copy of the receipt. This also is beneficial for if you decide to do a couple of rounds and you're proving that these letters were definitely delivered, but there's no response. So if they try to give you a stall letter and they're acting like they don't know who you are, or they say they didn't receive anything, you can say, no, no, I sent this certified mail. Here's a tracking number and it said it was delivered. So that's definitely a plus. As a plus, and it works against the credit bureaus. And if you need to sue them, you need to go to court, you can say, I've sent these letters, here's the tracking number, this is what's going on, and you are truly strengthening your own case by doing so. Here are the different locations for each of the credit bureaus that you want to mail those letters to. So this is pretty effective. So just have a copy of this somewhere. I will upload more addresses. This will be included in the training, but overall you just need the three locations and you're good to go. Okay, so now we have created the letters, we've mailed them out, and this is the next thing. What you should expect. What to expect after the dispute letters have been mailed out. So what you may want to do during this waiting period is you may want to check the tracking numbers to make sure that the letters have been for sure delivered to the credit bureaus you mailed them out to. You do want to wait for a response from the credit bureaus. Now, even though by law they have 30 to 45 days to respond to you, that's just in writing. There is a possibility that you may get results within those 30 days, which is a good thing. But this is just something you want to look out for. Don't get discouraged if a week has gone by, you haven't heard anything or seen any results or haven't had a response. Give it respectfully 30 to 45 days before you make your next move or send another round of letters. You do not want to send another round of letters sooner than the 30 days, because if you are sending too many letters out within a short period of time or during that time frame, they can reject the letters. And if you do that too much, they'll deem your letters, all of them, as frivolous and they won't respond. Even if you wait another 30 days and then send letters out, the bureaus tend to put you in like a box. They kind of flag your credit profile, and it just makes the disputing process a little tedious. So just be patient, have some patience. It took a long time for your credit to get the way that it is now, so just give it the respectable time that by law under the FCRA the bureaus have. So just give it some time. Now you may receive some stall letters. It's very frustrating, but you need to know what a stall letter entails. So if you know you've followed the training to the T, you've put the information in correctly, you gave your identifying information, your two forms of ID, they know exactly who you are. However, you might get a stall letter that says something like, hey, we don't know who you are. We got some letter talking about a dispute or something, but we don't know who you are. You didn't send us proof or call us and whatever. That's if it doesn't really make sense and it's odd to you and you know you've done everything correctly, understand they're stalling. You can actually use that when you do a second round. You can use that against the credit bureaus and say, hey, I gave you everything. Here's a copy of my first letter. Now I'm giving you another dispute letter because this is what you guys sent. And if you want to send them a copy of everything, like I said, paper trail, definitely send it to them because they have to address that issue as well. Another thing is you'll probably get letters from the creditor or the collection company. Be careful of that. Once that happens, then they are indirectly acknowledging your dispute letters, but there is a process, there is a protocol. When you file a dispute with the credit bureaus then has to reach out to the collection agency or the creditor, and the creditor has 30 days to respond, to do their investigation and respond back to the credit bureau, and the credit bureau is supposed to send you the results of the investigation. Through that investigation process or during that time, that creditor or collection agency may reach out to you. Be careful. If you want to communicate with them, that's fine, but I would wait until after the investigation process is over. What can happen is the creditor can then turn around and say to the credit bureau, hey, we talked to them, they said they're fine, everything's great, and this debt is verified, and you do not want that. But these are just some things you want to look out for. Now, creditors too, just like the credit bureaus, could potentially give you a stall letter. So whether you are disputing directly with the creditor or through the credit bureau, the creditors can send you something in writing stating that allegedly we heard from the bureaus about this account that definitely belongs to you, but we don't really know who you are. It sounds weird, right? So that's just a stall letter. Anytime you're getting some sort of response that is not simply either verifying the debt or stating that they're removing the debt from your credit report, it is a stall letter. The creditors, they may write to you, they may call you. If they send you something in writing, that's a stall letter. Or if they're trying to get you to settle or something like that, just be careful of that. They may call you as well. I wouldn't answer the phone. I wouldn't answer the phone call. Let them address the matter accordingly, just like you are. You haven't heard from them all this time. They keep reporting your information to the credit bureaus inaccurately. Then let them continue with the necessary protocol. Make them respect your letters. Make them respect the process that you're taking, and don't help them out. Don't let them shorten the investigation. Just simply don't respond. And not, it will not stress this enough, but responding to the creditors, my opinion, do not respond. That's first and first mostly. Do not respond to these creditors. They are not here to help you. They're not going to help you. They're not going to give you advice, friendly advice. And if they do, they don't stick to their guns unless it's in writing. And even in those cases, it's not always helpful. But responding to the creditors, I strongly recommend don't respond to the creditors for the reason why I just gave. If you do decide to talk to the creditors, only communicate to them in writing. Remember the paper trail. Always keep a paper trail. You may want to sue them one day, or they may want to sue you thinking you're not creating a paper trail, that you're not saving your information when in actuality you really are. So definitely communicate to them in writing only, facts only, and basically repeat everything that you put in your dispute letter to the credit bureau. Just say that to them in writing. Dispute again with the credit bureaus, but show proof of their response. Exactly, I stated it before. So if the creditors are responding to you, if they're sending you something in writing, you've basically alarmed them, you've shooken them up. They just want money from you. They want something. They want to ruin your credibility and your credit, literally. So what I would do is I would write another dispute letter, show the bureaus that, hey, they're reaching out to me, they're acknowledging me, but they're not doing what they're supposed to do, neither verifying the debt or deleting the debt. That is very important. I do have several template letters for creditors that are available with this training. So whenever you want, you can just download them and use them. Personally, I don't respond to creditors often because if you write really good dispute letters to the bureaus, then you will get the results that you need. There are cases where you need to respond to creditors, or you just want to dispute directly with a creditor and not necessarily the bureaus. You can, and those template letters that I will have available will be very effective. We've come to the conclusion of this training. I want to say thank you so much for purchasing this training and to want to take the first step in fixing your credit and possibly others. It's a wonderful, interesting, amazing journey, but it's very productive and it's a necessity. So definitely congratulate yourself, pat yourself on the back for taking this step. But if you need additional help, have any questions, concerns, or if you just want me to fix your credit personally or my company, an agent for my company, definitely reach out. This is my website, fixmycreditnow850.com. You can always shoot me an email at fixmycreditnow850@yahoo. My phone number is 844-981-4454. And feel free to join me on Facebook. I have a lot of tips. I go live at least once a week. I have my members to hop on. They ask questions. They're pretty involved too. But yeah, definitely check us out. And thank you again for your time and good luck on your journey.